I made sure that Mueller could look at the Trumps. My Democratic friends seem to have no interest in looking at something that screams to reek. Now, if you don't know one of your family members is getting $87,000 a month from the most corrupt gas company in the Ukraine, and it's your job to deal with corruption in the Ukraine, you're not looking very hard. And I say this about a good friend. If you change the name to Pence or Trump or Barrasso or Graham, there'd be a completely different attitude by my friends on the other side. I can only imagine if a Republican vice president given the charge to clean up the Ukraine, this happened. There would be investigation upon investigation, and they would deserve the scrutiny.
President Trump tried to cheat. He got caught, and then he worked hard to cover it up. The military and security aid was only released on September 11th, after the hold became public, after the House launched an investigation, and after Congress learned about the existence of a whistleblower complaint. The $391 million in security aid was only released because President Trump was caught red-handed. The actions of President Trump and high-level White House officials allowed his abuse of power to continue beyond the watchful eye of Congress and, most importantly, the American people.
The next day, on September 11th, President Trump met with Vice President Pence, Mulvaney, and Senator Portman to discuss the hold. Later that day, the president relented and lifted the hold after a scheme had been exposed. The president's decision to release the aid, just like his decision to impose the hold, was never explained. Cooper testified that President Trump's lifting of the hold, quote, really came out of the blue. It was quite abrupt. The only logical conclusion based on all of this evidence is that the president lifted the hold on September 11th because he got caught. The president's decision to lift the hold without any explanation is also very telling. If the hold was put in place for legitimate policy reasons, why lift it arbitrarily with no explanation? By lifting the hold only after Congress had launched an investigation, when, as Lieutenant Colonel Vindman testified, none of the facts on the ground had changed since the hold had been put into place, the president was conceding that there was never a legitimate purpose. As a legal matter, the fact that the president's corrupt scheme was not fully successful makes no difference. Trump's abuse occurred at the moment he used the power of the presidency to assist his re-election campaign, undermining our free and fair elections and our national security. When President Trump, for his own personal political gain, asked for a favor from President Zelensky, he did exactly what the framers feared most. He invited the influence of a foreign power into our elections. He used the power of his office to secure that advantage and jeopardized our national security. Yet President Trump maintains that he was always in the right and that his July 25th call with President Zelensky was perfect. President Trump has made it clear that he believes he is free to use his powers the same way, to the same ends, whenever and wherever he pleases. And even more troubling, he's even doubling down on his abuse, inviting other countries to interfere in our elections. The bottom line is that the president used the powers of his office for personal political gain. He did so knowingly, deliberately, and repeatedly. And his misconduct continues to this day.
An emboldened Russia is a threat to the United States and global security around the world. The president's willingness to put himself over country undercut our European allies' confidence in America's commitment to deterring Russian aggression. And it signaled to adversaries and friends alike that the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, our commander-in-chief, could be influenced by manipulating his perception of what was best for his personal interests. Now, I have no doubt that the Russians and probably every other nation that has the capacity does a psychological profile of the President of the United States, as we profile other leaders. If a president can be so easily manipulated to disbelieve his own intelligence agencies, to accept the propaganda of the Kremlin, that is a threat to our national security. And that is just what has happened here. Why does Ukraine matter to the United States? Because we're talking about a small country that many people know very little about. Well, this small country, this ally of ours, is a country hungry for reform and eager for a stronger relation with its most powerful, important ally, the United States. And we're talking about ourselves and what it means to the strength of our own democracy and democracies around the world when countries like Ukraine are fighting our fight against authoritarianism. At least that used to be our fight. And God help us if it's not our fight still. If our allies can't trust us to stand behind them in a time of need, we will soon not have a single ally left. Look, I know it's painful to see some of our allies and how they talk about this president, because when they talk about this president, they're also talking about the United States. And it's painful to see our allies distance themselves from the United States. And it's more than painful, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to us. I think it was Churchill once said, there's nothing worse than allies except having no allies. But if we're going to condition our support for our allies on their willingness to be dragged kicking and screaming into our politics, if we're going to condition the strength of our alliance on whether they'll help us cheat in an election, we're not going to have a single ally left. And not a single one of us in this chamber is ever going to be able to say one of our counterparts to respect the rule of law without it being thrown in our face. It shouldn't matter that it wasn't you. It shouldn't matter that it was Marie Yovanovitch. It shouldn't matter that it was Joe Biden. Because I'll tell you something, the next time, it just may be you. It just may be you. Do you think for a moment that any of you, no matter what your relationship with this president, no matter how close you are to this president, do you think for a moment that if he felt it was in his interest, he wouldn't ask you to be investigated? Do you think for a moment that he wouldn't? And if somewhere deep down below you realize that he would, you cannot leave a man like that in office when he has violated the Constitution. Merely exposing the president's scheme has not stopped him from continuing this destructive pattern of behavior that has brought us to this somber moment. He is who he is. That will not change, and nor will the danger associated with him. Every piece of evidence supports that terrible conclusion, that the President of the United States will abuse his power again, that he will continue to solicit foreign interference to help corruptly secure his reelection. He has shown neither remorse nor acknowledgement of wrongdoing. If you can believe that July 25th was a perfect call, that asking for investigations of your political opponents and using the power of your office to make it so is perfectly fine, then there is nothing that would stop you from doing it again. President Trump has abused the power of his office and must be removed from that office. Mr. McConnell, I yield back.
We all know that no other American could use the vast powers of our government to undertake a corrupt scheme to cheat, to win an election, and then use those same powers to suppress the evidence of his constitutional crime. we would not allow, no, I am convinced that we would not allow any member of our state or local governments to use the official powers of their office to cover up crimes and misdeeds. As this body is well aware, mayors and governors have gone to jail for doing so.
President Trump prevented at least 12 current or former administration officials from testifying during the House's impeachment inquiry. He specifically forced 9 of those witnesses to defy duly authorized subpoenas. The facts are straightforward and they're not in dispute. President Trump's orders were clear. They were categorical, they were indiscriminate, and they were wrong. They prevented key government witnesses from testifying. There's no doubt. That's obstruction, plain and simple.
At bottom, these arguments amount to a claim that the President can dictate the terms of his own impeachment inquiry. President Trump's lawyers may insist that his grounds for defying Congress are unique and limited, that they only apply here, just this one time, that it was the House, not the President, that broke from precedent, that he would gladly comply with subpoenas if only the House would do as he insists. That is pure fantasy. The President's arguments are not a one-ride ticket. They're not unique to these facts. Unless they are firmly and finally rejected here, these bogus excuses will reappear every time Congress investigates any president for serious abuses of power. Every single time. If he is not removed from office, if he is permitted to defy the Congress entirely, categorically, to say that subpoenas from Congress in an impeachment inquiry are nonsense, then we will have lost, the House will have lost, the Senate certainly will have lost all power to hold any president accountable. This is a determination by President Trump that he wants to be all-powerful. He does not have to respect the Congress. He does not have to respect the representatives of the people. Only his will goes. He is a dictator. This must not stand, and that is why, another reason, he must be removed from office.